Some legends are told, some turn to dust or to gold, but you will remember me for centuries.
This is the Cameron Parker Show, brought to you by Spreaker, where we discuss everything from around the local professional sports scene in Colorado, such as the Denver Broncos.
Chris Harris comes out. I don't know if he was on the drive, but he said I knew 15 seconds into that game that I should have been on T.Y. Hilton. If players are coming out and saying that, it falls again on the coaching staff.
Not to mention insiders from around your local sports scene. Ryan Spilborgs, former outfielder for your Colorado Rockies.
It's not going to be the 25 guys that leave spring training that are going to be the only guys the entire season. I mean, you need depth. You need guys that are going to be in your minor leagues that you may not expect.
Ryan Edwards.
You know, when you're talking about an offensive line, it's about the five best guys, right? And you're talking about the five best guys gelling. There hasn't been a lot of time for that.
It's showtime. Are you ready?
Welcome in, ladies and gentlemen. It is another edition of the Cameron Parker Show, another edition of where we are going live for a Cameron Parker Show podcast. We are going to be, want to break some news to you guys. We are going to be doing something a little bit differently. We will be no longer going live, but our podcast will be going live. What we will start doing on Friday is that we will start recording our podcast, my podcasts, and then we will clean them up, make sure that they are the cleanest possible format for a podcast, and then we will ship it out to all the different formats, iHeartRadio, iTunes, so on and so forth, to make sure it's the best quality product out there for you guys. Because the Cameron Parker Show is one of the best podcasts around, ladies and gentlemen. It is the best. I can attest to that. I am the host of the Cameron Parker Show. Thank you guys very much for tuning in. It is a mock draft simulator, Cameron Parker Show, for those of you that are tuning in. And what is a mock draft simulator? Well, a mock draft simulator, for those of you guys that do not know what a mock draft simulator is, I go and I search onto fanspeak.com. And on fanspeak.com, we go through all these different scenarios, pre-scenarios. And by pre-scenarios, what I'm talking about is that I'm just saying scenarios, scenarios that involve either what will be happening before the NFL draft. For instance, we'll be doing a scenario by happenstance that will involve the Denver Broncos signing a quarterback. Really surefying that quarterback position, one of the biggest positions of need, and we will make sure that position is solidified heading into the NFL draft. Meaning, well, what should the Denver Broncos do in the NFL draft in that type of scenario? Also, another scenario will be the scenario that doesn't involve getting a quarterback in free agency, which is personally the scenario that I love the most, and it's a scenario that I personally feel is the best possible solution for the Denver Broncos. In order to get in order to get a lot of rapport with a lot of the offensive teammates, and I should say long-standing offensive stability, the best possible scenario is, one, either go get Kirk Cousins, and two, draft the quarterback of the future in either Baker Mayfield, Sam Darnold, or Josh Rosen, maybe even Josh Allen for that matter. And in these types of scenarios, it creates a lot of different avenues of where people could go. And in fact, if we have enough time, I will try and see if we can maybe even do a manage the cap simulator for you guys and kind of get a feel of what could some potential moves happen in free agency that might shake up the roster and so it's going to be a fun show if you guys are tuning in. Thank you guys very much. It is the Cameron Parker Show. Make sure to follow the Cameron Parker Show Twitter handle at CP_show. Follow my own Twitter account at Cameron Parker PO. I am flying solo tonight, and that's fine. I've been flying solo every now and again. And it is the Cameron Parker Show after all. So thank you guys very much for tuning in. Make sure, again, that you follow all those Twitter handles. And since it is Senior Bowl week, Carl Dumbler will be on the show at some point. And make sure that you follow Carl Dumbler at Carl Dumbler MHH over at Mile High Huddle. Also, please follow Sayre Bettinger. He is also with Carl down in the Senior Bowl with all of the action down there in Mobile, Alabama. Please follow Sayre Bettinger at Sayre Bettinger, and that is Sayre Bettinger, Bedingeer. And it's important to follow these guys because they will be really at the forefront for all those people that are Broncos country fanatics and everything surrounding Denver Broncos country. Everybody should be following Sayre Bettinger and Carl Dumbler during the week. Obviously, the Troy Ranks of the world and the Patrick Smyths and the Andrew Masons and all those guys certainly are going to be given that opportunity because, well, they are near the top of their class. The best case scenario for us and as Bronco fans really is to follow guys like Carl Dumbler over at Mile High Huddle and Sayre Bettinger over at the site that I write for, and that is at Predominantly Orange. Let's get these mock draft simulators up and running. We are about 10 minutes into the show, and we'll be queuing up the Fan Speak Simulator, ladies and gentlemen. And again, in these types of mock draft simulators is this notion that you have to create a lot of different scenarios. Scenarios going into it where you have to create a big board, you have to create, not create a big board, but necessarily it is to pick a big board. And if you guys want to chime in on the Cameron Parker Show during this live podcast, please do so. You guys can text in the show by creating a Spreaker account and comment on the chat line. Or you can actually tweet the Cameron Parker Show. Yes, and this is why I give out that Twitter handle, ladies and gentlemen. It is so that you can tweet the Cameron Parker Show, giving some potential moves and some potential areas of need of people that are out there and are available. And so, with that being said, we now cue in the Cameron Parker Show Fan Speak Mock Draft Simulator. And so we will be selecting from the Denver Broncos point of view. We will be going to 7 rounds. And after that, we'll be asked to pick the big board. And when we pick the big board, that will include either Fanspeak, Draftplex, Draft Tech, NFL Mock, Bleacher Report, Matt Miller, Kingdom Connection, Draft Utopia, and NFL Draft Scout. And it's worth noting that Draft Utopia and NFL Draft Scout have actually yet been updated, or at least the fairly recent ones that are updated is Fanspeak, Matt Miller, and NFL Mock. Those are the 3 that are really the most unique and the most beneficial, really, when trying to get maybe the best big board possible for a draft simulator. So let's all get it all hunky dory. Let's get it in there. Let's craft this big board. We are going to use the Bleacher Report Matt Miller at NFL Draft Scout. He is a good follow for all things Draft Insight. He does tend to like a lot of the prospects, but all in all, he seems to be very beneficial towards prospects and everybody of that ilk. So we queue it up, and then therefore we're going to select team needs. And in there, we will also be selecting a type of company, a type of site, I should say, and that could be NFL Mock, it could be FanSpeak. In light of the fact that Sayer Benninger is in the Senior Bowl right now, and he actually writes for the NFL Mock crew, we will be choosing the NFL Mock as far as draft needs. And that cues us up to the difficulty. And for right now, we will go with the classic difficulty. And so to recap, we are going 7 rounds. We are using the big board by Matt Miller and team needs by NFL Mock. And we will let the draft begin. Again, it is a FanSpeak mock draft simulator. If you guys are trying to tune in for the very first time on the Cameron Parker Show, you are tuning in to, well, a very fortunate Cameron Parker Show because we are doing a mock draft simulator live involving the Denver Broncos. The Cameron Parker Show is broadcasting to the audience of the Denver sports metro area of sports teams, making that the Denver Broncos, making that the Colorado Avalanche, who are down 2-0 right now after, I believe it's the second period. And then obviously you go to the Colorado Rockies for their baseball team, and so on and so forth. There's a lot of other teams that really do go unnoticed because it is a Denver Broncos town. And this is why we just focus all of our energy on the Denver Broncos entirely. Thank you guys for tuning in. We will kick off the FanSpeak simulator right now, and as the thing swirls, as the FanSpeak simulator swirls, it's again a reminder that the Cameron Parker Show is brought to you on Spreaker, iHeartRadio. Please subscribe to the Cameron Parker Show on iTunes. Also, you can also follow us over on YouTube as well. We will be broadcasting on YouTube. So YouTube, Spreaker, iTunes, and iHeartRadio, we have you guys covered for a plethora of places to listen to the Cameron Parker Show. And oh, by the way, got this about 2 months ago, that the Cameron Parker Show is in fact going to be broadcasted on Amazon Echo. If you guys have the Amazon Echo at home, you can talk to it. You can say whatever. Really, it's kind of like a Siri. You guys can say whatever it is that you guys want to it. So ultimately, it's definitely an opportunity, really, for you guys to really go out there and and listen to the Cameron Parker Show. Make it a part of your guys' evening. So here we go. In a very interesting twist, remember, we are coming into this situation with the notion that Kirk Cousins is the starting quarterback for the Denver Broncos. And in this scenario of the involving of Kirk Cousins, it really, aside from my offensive fetish, really was Saquon Barkley. It really has turned out, to be honest, about as well as you could have if you're a Denver Broncos fan. Because sitting there at number 5, because the Broncos own the 5th pick in the first round, is they are sitting with, well, Minkah Fitzpatrick, Quentin Nelson, Roquan Smith, Bradley Chubb, Sam Darnold, if they decide to just go for Sam Darnold, Darius Guice, Denzel Ward, Josh Allen if they wanted to go for a project. Josh Jackson, Baker Mayfield. But in essence, it is a perfect situation for the Denver Broncos because if it is a Kirk Cousins scenario, they want to build the best possible team around Kirk Cousins. And the best possible way to ever do that is by getting the best guard to come in the NFL draft for the past 5-10 years. And the Denver Broncos will select with their 5th pick, Quentin Nelson out of Notre Dame. He's a big, strong, physical guy. He's kind of like a WWE fighter. He throws people off balance at a lot, actually. And in fact, he's so strong, and he has incredible balance to go with it. With feet move exceptionally well, the hands and the hand placement necessarily are spectacular. For a guy like a Quentin Nelson. And really, if you think about it, Quentin Nelson is your prototypical guard that could be set forth and really be solidifying an offensive line that could ideally make the offensive line that much better next year. If you get a guy like a Quentin Nelson or a guy like a Will Hernandez, who supposedly showed up well at the Senior Bowl today, but the fact of the matter is, if you get a guy like a Quentin Nelson, you are solidifying the left guard spot and your right guard spot, whether that is putting Leary at left guard or Nelson at right guard. The fact of the matter is that your guards are solidified. It can potentially give some flexibility of what they want to do with Matt Paradis. Do they want to trade Matt Paradis, or is some team going to be enticed enough of trying to give an offer sheet to Matt Paradis and then have the Broncos decide whether or not to match it? Who knows? But the fact of the matter is that the Denver Broncos are in a very interesting scenario if they get Quentin Nelson. So now on the clock. So right now on the clock for the Denver Broncos is this opportunity to really get dynamic playmakers. And in this type of scenario, it's all about making Kirk Cousins happy. But at the same time, it's also about getting the best players that are available right then and there. And really, if you think about it, the best possible scenario for the Denver Broncos is really to add a lot of depth anywhere and by any means necessary. We realized that the special teams was a significant issue last year. The best possible scenario of what could happen for the Broncos is maybe you get a guy like a Tremaine excuse me, a Tremaine Edmonds, if it just so happens that he falls into that second round. Do they get a guy like a Tremaine Edmonds? Highly doubt it, because Tremaine Edmonds is one of the best linebackers, and maybe the best linebacker behind Roquan Smith. A lot of people are really buzzing up Tremaine Edwards up to what Roquan Smith has. In fact, people are comparing Tremaine Edmonds to Anthony Barr. There's a lot really there for the Denver Broncos. But all in all, special teams was a disaster. And we don't know, ideally, what could happen with the Emmanuel Sanders situation, the Demaryius Thomas situation. And really, if you look at it just by strictly of what this scenario is going off of, the fact that, yes, Christian Kirk is available for the Denver Broncos in the second round, and I should say the 8th pick of the second round, is a little bit intriguing. And so for that, the opportunity to get a guy like Christian Kirk in the second round and add a lot of playmaking ability really gives so much stability at that special team spot of being a punt returner, of being, that guy that's really going to set the world apart as far as a special teamer. But not only that, give Kirk Cousins that dynamic playmaker that will be impactful on the offense, kind of like what he had with Jamison Crowder. And if the Denver Broncos do, in fact, decide to go after Kirk Cousins, we'll see ultimately where they want to go. But right now, it appears that the Broncos, who are on the clock with pick number 7 in the third round, and it looks like there are still some players available. R.J. McIntosh is out there. Michael Gallup, if they want to go for a wide receiver again. But this is round 3. And, you look at some of the players that are out there. Mark Andrews. Some people have touted Mark Andrews as maybe being the best tight end in the entire draft. I don't personally believe that he's going to be there in the third round just by his ability to stretch the field. His ability to stretch the field compared to Dallas Goedert is about the same. Dallas Goedert is more of your pure receiving threat. Mark Andrews is definitely a receiving threat, but when given the opportunity, he can block for you. And if you can have the opportunity to really solidify all your positions, and if you decided not to go after the tight end position in free agency, it allows you to really go after hard the tight end position, which actually might be better than last year. Look, we talked about it a little bit when we had Nick on last week on Friday. The tight end position, it was phenomenal from the top end, and with guys like Evan Ingram, O.J. Howard, Adam Shaheen, all those guys that were front of the line guys, David Njoku being another one. All those guys were front of the line guys, but there really wasn't a lot of depth after it. So, those guys that could potentially be mid-round picks that could end up being something special later on down the road, I think you're gonna see that a lot more in this draft, and getting the opportunity still to get a Mark Andrews in the third round to add a lot of dynamic playmaking as far as the offense is concerned, is really going to set apart potentially, where the Broncos could be with this type of offense. You get a guy like a Quentin Nelson, you get a guy, like a Christian Kirk that's going to help you in special teams, and maybe even be your dynamic number 2 wide receiver. And not just that, but be a dynamic number 2 receiver that could fluctuate and be what Emmanuel Sanders was if they decided to go away from Emmanuel in the offseason. Another opportunity for the Broncos is to really look long and hard, even at the running back position. And if they can grab, one of these type of running backs that are going to potentially be pretty special, then they have the opportunity to, again, really solidify where they might be at with their with this team. Guys like Royce Freeman, guys like Sony Michel, guys like Nick Chubb potentially if he falls down, both Sony Michel rather, it really provides a very interesting dynamic and just provides more opportunity for the Denver Broncos to find a lot of value in a third-round pick. If you think back to a lot of the history of the Denver Broncos and with their second and third-round picks, they've not been all that successful, all told. Adam Gotsis could potentially pan out. Derek Wolfe and Adam Gotsis could potentially be maybe the best of the bunch. And Cody Latimer could sneak into that conversation. He's starting to sneak into that conversation as being a good, maybe even well-rounded wide receiver, getting to that. But really, if they can add a lot of value to that running back position, give competition to Devontae Booker, and understanding that C.J. Anderson may not be back next year. And in getting a guy like a Kirk Cousins would trigger that. It would trigger the opportunity for the Broncos to solidify everywhere along the ball. And drafting a guy like Royce Freeman, who I believe, honestly, is a better version of C.J. Anderson. If they can get a guy like that and really hone in on where they are at with this team and with this running game, Royce Freeman is a guy that could challenge Devontae Booker for a starting spot. I mean, he's that good, ladies and gentlemen, at least in my opinion. And so I think that Royce Freeman, he's a bowling ball. You certainly worry about his injury history. I think he had a couple of knee issues. He did tear his ACL. He did have a knee issue. Not an ACL, but he had a significant knee injury. So you do worry potentially of some scenarios for him of what could potentially the mobility that he has in his knee. Is it going to restrict him by all means? We don't know, but the fact is that he could potentially be there in the third round, and he could potentially be a great value pick for a team in the third round. Moving on to the fourth round. So right now, if you guys are trying to keep tabs at home, the Denver Broncos have Quentin Nelson, Christian Kirk, Mark Andrews, and Royce Freeman. And right now, I think if you're looking at it, they probably should maybe go defense here. Maybe see if they want to try and add a lot of depth on that defensive line. Maybe just if and when, I should say particularly when, the Denver Broncos decide to move on from Domata Peko because he did sign a 2-year deal and he's also getting up there in age. They want to make sure that they add a lot of depth at that position. So this could potentially be a scenario where they do that here in round 4. And getting Star Lotulelei, getting his brother, would be a great pair with a guy like, let's just say, Domata Peko's brother. Getting a guy to pair alongside Kyle Peko or Zach Kerr or a bunch of other guys that really could be dynamic of a defensive line. Lowell Lotulelei, there are some inconsistency issues. The motor may have kind of tapered off a bit, but he was a phenomenal prospect coming out. If he came out last season, decided to return, and really the rest is history. So here, maybe they decide to go linebacker. They could surprise people and decide to draft, and could decide to draft a quarterback if they just decided that they wanted to just mess around and get a linebacker. So ultimately, it's important to understand where the Broncos are. And linebacker position could end up being one that Well, both Corey Nelson and Todd Davis are free agents. And it's no telling whether both will be back or one or the other. But the fact of the matter is that the linebacking core of the Denver Broncos, especially in the middle, could potentially see some change. And we will see, I think, of where they go. I think that, getting a guy, I believe, that is versatile, he's smart, I think he's incredible as far as where he could potentially be if he was healthy. I think he had a significant injury. But getting a guy maybe like a Jack Cichy from Wisconsin, his other counterpart, Garrett Dooley from Wisconsin, guys like that could potentially bring a lot of versatility, that can be on the outside or be on the inside. Guys that can really just solidify depth everywhere on the line. And you don't know exactly what could happen with Shaquille Barrett. Shaquille Barrett could potentially be a guy that sees a significant contract this way that the Broncos could potentially not match. So, however, if you get a guy that's an unknowner, but if you get a guy like a Nick DeLuca, a guy that is unheralded, people don't really know a lot about his name, or don't really know a lot about him, but he is a thumper. He is a guy that will provide a lot of stability in that middle part of the line, and really getting him in the fourth round is, I think, a lot of value for a team that could be lacking in a lot of areas with the linebacker position. Nick DeLuca really solidifies a spot, I believe, at linebacker. And frankly, Nick DeLuca could be a guy that might start day one because of the smarts, the instincts, everything I just feel is there for Nick DeLuca to really sneak up on a lot of people and really impress coaches. And the Broncos and the Texans are going to get front and center look of Nick DeLuca. I believe Nick DeLuca's at the Senior Bowl. We'll get the chance to see maybe where they want to go. But Nick DeLuca is most definitely a player, personally, I would want to watch out for, in the at least here in the Senior Bowl and potentially come NFL draft time. So entering round 5, we can also go defense again here, or we can go back to offensive line, which was obviously a pretty bad spot to be in. We can go tackle if we decided to. There's not a whole lot there. Brandon Parker is out there. Brett Toth might be an option in maybe the later rounds, although he seems to really starting to kind of make a name for himself. Joseph Noteboom is starting to generate some buzz down from TCU. So ultimately, I think the Broncos could go after offensive linemen. They could go after a corner. They could go after a safety, maybe solidify that safety spot a little bit more. But it's also understandable to to go after a guy that is versatile enough that can maybe even play corner, that's where the versatility could come in, and vice versa with a guy that's a cornerback that could end up playing safety. Both those positions are just flexible to the point where, well, maybe there might be some options there. And there are a lot of significant options still available for the Broncos at cornerback. And we talk about it a lot. We talk about the fact that there could be, some teams that, especially John Elway, with the opportunity to even watch Stanford, get a look at Stanford, and see the potential players there. He could potentially have maybe the leg up, I should say, with some of the players or with some of the teams because he's been watching Stanford football. He's a graduate from there, but he's also a good executive. He's not an executive that's going to sit on his hands and just let people come to him. But in this type of scenario, it sure seems like people are coming to him in this draft, and guys like Quentin Meeks, who could potentially be there in round 5, would give a lot of stability to the Denver Broncos mock draft. And my hope for you guys is that after I get finished with this mock draft, that you guys will see this mock draft and you guys can grade it. Tweet at the Cameron Parker Show, or tweet at the my personal Twitter account at Cameron Parker PO. Let me know what you guys feel about it. So I will be sure to share this after it's all over with. Looks like we're only going to have about time for just one scenario, and this is the one scenario only. Now, the interesting position, if the Broncos decided to go that route, certainly would be edge rusher. And I don't know where the Broncos could be with it, although I do believe that it's a very interesting dilemma, to say the least. Now, the other one that could surprise a lot of people, two positions actually. Quarterback certainly could surprise a lot of people here in round 5. The other position just in these later rounds that could surprise some people would be kicker. Yes, I realize that. And people are probably thinking, well, why a kicker? Well, and maybe it isn't the point that you want to draft a kicker for the Broncos, but I do believe that McManus's struggles this last season and the inconsistencies that he had, I think, could open up a lot of possibilities to where the Broncos do bring in a kicker as a undrafted free agent. I believe that. And I think if you're the Broncos, it's a good possibility. You think back to where Brandon McManus was just as an undrafted free agent. He signed with the Indianapolis Colts, and it never really panned out with the Colts. He was signed by the Denver Broncos, and he ended up competing against Matt Prater. And due to off-the-field issues with Matt Prater, Brandon McManus was then thrusted into the kicking duties, struggled his first year, but really came to a head as a solid, like Steven Gostkowski type kicker, and really performed at a really high level. People argue that he could have been the league MVP in the Super Bowl year of 2015. Gave him that massive contract. So it's possible they don't go kicker here. I understand the reasons why. I also understand the reasons for. I'm personally am not going to go draft a kicker here, but it's a scenario for you guys that you guys might want to consider and look out there for. That don't be surprised if if they do sign and potentially draft a kicker in round 6 or 7. I'm going to go after an offensive tackle here in round 5, and there's no telling if he'll be there in round 5, but it certainly appears like he's a guy that's going to be making a lot of names for himself. It's a guy by the name of Brett Toth from Army. He's a guy that I think is showing that he is athletic. And coming from Army, he is a powerful run blocker. I think he would fit great. I think in the zone scheme, they could, if they wanted to, switch him to a guard and potentially be flexible there. He is a player that has a mean streak about him. And I think that if you get a guy like that in round 5 with the potential to maybe be a superstar and solidify more depth on that offensive line, you have to consider a guy like Brett Toth. And we move into round 6. So to kind of recap for you guys what this draft consists of so far: Quentin Nelson, Christian Kirk, Mark Andrews, Royce Freeman, Lowell Latuale, Nick DeLuca, Quentin Meeks, Brett Toth. That's where we stand right now as we enter round 6. Now this is kind of where you get into that interesting one, where do they want to go after a quarterback? Do they want to go after, a guy like a Kyle Lauletta in round 6? Do they want to go after, a Riley Ferguson, who's from the same university as Paxton Lynch? But it's important to understand that if, in my scenario, and in this particular scenario, if the Denver Broncos chose to go after Kirk Cousins, then potentially Paxton Lynch, in my estimation, will return on the sidelines, and he will be the backup. Now, the other position that was not taken yet is edge rusher. I honestly think they do address pass rusher, but due to the shakeup and potentially of where we were here on this mock draft, there's just nothing there that at least looks appealing, to say the least. Linebacker again, Garrett Dooley is out there. Chris Worley is a potential option. They can go after a running back again, but another opportunity potentially would be going after defensive line and just kind of shoring up that defensive line. And a possible opportunity, another possible choice, if taken down that route, would be a guy like a Poona Ford from Texas. Scott Pagano from Oregon, Michael Hill, Ohio State. There's a Coven Henderson, James Looney from California, Christian LeCouture from LSU, Justin Jones from NC State. Maybe going after wide receiver again. But they kind of already went after that. We're going to go defensive line, and we're going to go Poona Ford from Texas. He is a strong guy. He's actually incredibly athletic, and again, I think that it's possible the Broncos could go after defensive line hard just based off of the age of potential players, and you don't know if some players are going to retire here in the near future. So I do think that the defensive line will be a must-add for the Denver Broncos in the draft and really in free agency. Now, as far as the seventh round, well, personally to me, I think that you have to go quarterback. Not just what I would do, but I think that this is what John Elway would do. And I think that getting a guy like Kyle Lauletta, who I actually really like a lot, but I'm hearing some rumblings that he's not having the best Senior Bowl, that could potentially move him down to potentially the 6th and 7th round. But getting him the opportunity to sit behind Kirk Cousins, get the chance to learn under an offensive coordinator, constant offensive coordinators, I think would do him good. So I think getting a guy like Kyle Lauletta would just be another guy to compete with Chad Kelly and Paxton Lynch and Kirk Cousins. And who knows potentially what the future might hold for Kirk Cousins. And even for that, who knows what the future would hold for a guy like a Paxton Lynch or a Chad Kelly. Chad Kelly especially. We know the kind of ticking time bomb that he is personally. But yeah, so I will share this. I will share this mock draft with you guys, and then you guys let me know where you guys stand on this mock draft. Do you guys like it? Do you guys hate it? Do you guys not really? Do you guys just don't even care? You guys let me know. Potentially, what you guys feel. And I will be doing another one. I said I was going to be doing a second one. We're running out of time here right now on the Cam Parker Show. But thank you guys very much for making the Cam Parker Show a possible listening option for you guys. Again, we are on iTunes, so please subscribe to the iTunes Cameron Parker Show podcast. Also, listen to us on iHeartRadio, the Spreaker site. Please be sure to listen to us on there. YouTube as well. Amazon Echo by just saying listen to Cameron Parker Show. So thank you guys again for making the Cameron Parker Show part of your guys this evening. And I will be back on Friday, and we're going to go a little bit more in depth on draft prospects, because as I mentioned earlier, Sayer Bettinger is in Mobile, Alabama, covering the Senior Bowl, and the Senior Bowl is on Saturday at 12:30 Mountain Time on NFL Network. So you guys will not want to miss the Denver Broncos coverage of the Cameron Parker Show on that Friday with Sayer Bettinger. So please do tune in on Friday. And again, remember, we will not be going live, but I will record it, and please be sure to listen to it on, and please be sure to listen to it once it becomes available. Thank you guys again for making the Cameron Parker Show part of your guys' evening, and I hope you guys have a blessed rest of your night and a rest of your week until Friday.